Okay, so in about 60 seconds, Tawny is going to hit that Facebook live broadcast. And once that pops up, Chessa, you're good to go.
Great. Good evening. I'm Chessa Grasso Hickox, president of AAUW Walla Walla, and I would like to thank you for joining us for the second night of the 2022 General Election Candidate Forums. Tonight we'll be hearing from candidates from 16th Legislative District State Representative Position 2, Walla Walla County Prosecutor, and Walla Walla County Commissioner District 3 candidates. We appreciate you all being here for this chance to get to know the candidates and their positions on the issues. I would like to thank all our partners who made this forum possible, which include the Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce and the Walla Walla Association of Realtors. And now I'd like to introduce you to Kyle Tarbett, President and CEO of Walla Walla Valley Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Chessa, and thank you to all of you, our viewers, whether you're watching via Zoom or via Facebook. We welcome you and appreciate your attendance here tonight. Also like to thank all of these candidates who made time for us and have made themselves available to answer some questions and help you, the voters, understand a little bit about why they're running for office and what they might plan to do if elected. I would like to remind you that most of the questions that we ask tonight will come from you, the viewers. And so in order to ask a question, at the bottom of your screen, if you are on Zoom, click the Q&A feature and you'll be able to type in a question. And just a quick reminder, we have a few rules regarding the questions. So they must be relevant to the race that the person is running for. So ask about things that will be within the purview of the office of that specific race. Questions may not be directed at one candidate. Ask your question in a way that both candidates have a fair opportunity to respond. Please also avoid using a yes/no format. Open-ended questions will allow our candidates to talk about their experience, their ideas, and their qualifications for office. So if you would please ask your questions in that way. And just a reminder, if there is any profane, inappropriate, accusatory type language, even in the Q&A, will probably boot you from the forum. So for those of you who are watching on Facebook, there is not a chance for you to ask questions. It has to be done through Zoom, but please feel free to watch. Please feel free to share this forum with anybody who you feel might be interested, or go back and rewatch it on the Chamber's Facebook page later. I would also like to thank the AAUW and Chessa and our friends at the local Realtors Association for sponsoring this, and again to the candidates. One other person, a big thank you to Bertha Clayton, who will be our moderator tonight. Bertha, take it away.
Thank you, Kyle. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bertha Clayton, as Kyle said, and I will be moderating tonight's discussion. We have a lot to unpack, and we are going to get started with our candidates for Washington State's 16th Legislative District State Representative Position 2. So if everyone that is not a candidate for that race can turn off your video, thank you. Our two candidates tonight are Skyler Rude, the incumbent, and Jan Korn. We're going to start first with opening statements. And Skyler, because you're the incumbent, we're going to start with you.
All right. Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm Skyler Rude. I've been your state representative for 4 years now. Before I was elected, I served as Senator Maureen Walsh's legislative assistant for 2 years in the House and 2 years in the Senate. It has been a great honor to work for this district for 8 years now. My committee assignments include the Education Committee, which is K-12, Appropriations, which is the Operating Budget Committee, and the Healthcare Committee. My focus has primarily been in the K-12 area. I think that a high quality K-12 education is really the foundation for a person to be successful in the workforce. I have made working with the other side of the aisle a priority for me. And the reason for that is, first, it's the right thing to do. It's also the way to get things done for our district and serve the constituents of the 16th the best way that I can. So that's also been a focus. I came to the legislature not from any particular professional background or industry or any particular issue that brought me, but just a desire to serve the district in a way that I think Representative Neely and Senator Hewitt and Senator Walsh before me had done. And that was kind of the collaborative spirit that I think has served our district well. So I think just to mention a couple of my endorsements quickly, because they're pretty diverse: AWB, NFIB, Public School Employees of Washington, the Washington Education Association, the Washington Council of Police and Sheriffs, and the State Firefighters Council. So I think that that demonstrates kind of those are pretty opposite ends of the spectrum, some of those. So I look forward to hearing the questions and connecting with you.
Thanks, Skyler. Jan, to you, your opening statement, please.
I want to thank our sponsors for this evening's event and also everyone who has taken the time to tune in tonight. Events like this are at the heart of our democracy. It's so important that we have opportunities to talk through our values and vision for our communities, even when we differ, especially when we differ. I've worked in the service industry and was a small business owner for over 2 decades, which is why I know what it means to work hard. I worked as a waitress and as a hairstylist. I've spent long days on my feet listening to people and taking care of them. I built my career in the cosmetology industry, serving as the manager of a JCPenney in-store salon for 10 years before opening my own business, Impress Salon, in Walla Walla over 20 years ago. From childhood, I was a model of community involvement. I rarely say no when I'm asked to do something I care about, which is in large part why I'm here now. I've served on the executive boards of several local nonprofit organizations and volunteered with many others. I've been a member of Walla Walla New Rotary for 19 years and served on that board of directors for 7 years, which included 1 year as president. Our Rotary Club is part of a global nonprofit humanitarian organization, which is not political or religious. There are many passionate and strong differences of opinion, and yet in the end, we find solutions to challenges and issues facing our communities. It is that experience that makes me know that I can work with everyone in Olympia. I'm concerned about our inability to govern together. Our democracy is fragile. I'm running because our freedoms and right to privacy are under attack. I'm proud that Washington State was the first to legalize abortion through a vote of the people in 1970. I am the only candidate in this race that will stand up for your rights and support legislation that makes access to abortion equitable and protects medical providers who perform this procedure.
Thank you. We're going to start first with our question, and this we'll start with you, Skyler. If you are elected, or in your case, reelected, what are your priorities for the upcoming legislative session? And what specific actions do you plan to take on those priorities?
I have a couple different issues that I'm working on. One of them is updating Washington's Death with Dignity law. I've been working on that for about 3 years and had a study proviso in the budget this last year. The study will be due December 1st. So that's one. Improving oversight for our charter schools. The charter school law was passed by the voters several years ago. And there have been some instances that are unfortunate where charter schools weren't succeeding. And ultimately that hurts children and families when that happens. So I think there's improvement there to be had. And so I'm working with some House Democratic colleagues on developing a bill to provide additional oversight there. I'm concerned about inflation, as many of us are, and the impact that'll have on the state budget. I think it could be widespread. One issue that has been recurring is a cost of living adjustment for Plan 1 retirees. That's an older plan that was closed, I think, in 1977, and doesn't see an automatic cost of living adjustment. So as time goes on, these retirees who may be teachers or former public employees effectively see a decrease in their buying power every year. So that's something I'm working on. Looks like I'm out of time, so hopefully we'll have a chance for more.
Thank you. Jan, to you, your priorities and how you plan to take them on.
Well, my main concerns are for families, and that includes everything from housing, childcare, living wage. So I obviously, not being in the legislature now, would have to get up to speed and start meeting with people who are working on those things. Another thing that I think we need to start focusing on is energy and infrastructure. At some point, we need to stop waiting for things to completely fall apart and invest. We're going to have to spend money to invest in our future. We keep kicking the can down the road and trying to make things pretend it's not happening, I guess. I listened to President Biden's speech today on the factories and production with the chips, and it was extremely inspiring. I think there are things that we can find to do around here, using ingenuity and creativity to create more jobs and take care of everything. So yes, I'm learning as I go.
Thank you. We are going to go to audience questions now. And Jan, we're going to start with you. Please tell us your position on school choice, and please also share your views on gun control.
School choice as in charter schools?
The question is not specific, but I would assume that it is regarding charter schools.
Well, I've been attending the local school board meetings for about the last year and a half regularly, because when I was still working behind the chair, I started hearing some really almost wild stories about what was taking place at our school board meetings with community members' input. And I went for myself because I wasn't really sure that wasn't an exaggeration, but it was not. So I know there is a real push among some of our community members to drive people out of public schools into private schools, and consequently cutting into public funding. So I do believe parents should have the choice to put their kids in school where they want, but I think we need to look at the motivation and where this is all coming from and how much is reality and how much is hype. As far as guns, I don't think we need military style weapons. And I've been told by some community members that AR-15s are not, which is not true. So gun laws, sensible. That's what I am for.
Thank you, Jan. Skyler, to you. School choice and your thoughts on gun control.
The state constitution is very clear that it's the state's obligation to provide, it says ample provision for the education of all children. There's a court case on this. So as a state legislator, my duty is to public education. And charter schools, by the way, are part of public education. They're taxpayer funded. They're open to all students. They actually happen to have a higher rate of poverty, higher numbers of students of color, higher percentage of teachers of color. And unfortunately, the legislature has been underfunding charter schools. We know the value that money provides in creating additional programs in schools to supplement learning that's not happening at homes for some families. And so I've been working on that issue as well, making sure there's funding parity for charter schools. I went to a private school, Liberty Christian school, preschool through 8th grade. I think private schools have a place, and ultimately having choices is good for parents and children. I'm almost out of time. So on guns, Article 1, Section 24 of the state constitution is very clear that an individual citizen has the right to bear arms in our state. And so my obligation is sworn to uphold the Constitution and that provision as well.
Thank you. Let's go now to legalization of drugs and this in Washington State. The question from the audience is, with the Blake decision, which was a Supreme Court decision that will lead to the potential legalization of illegal drugs for personal consumption. And we're going to start with Skyler on this question. What is your position on this issue going into the next legislative session?
Well, the Blake decision refers to a Supreme Court decision that ruled our state's possession law unconstitutional. because it resulted in people who were possessing potentially unknowingly, didn't have to prove that they knowingly possessed drugs. They were criminalized. So the court struck it down. The legislature could have come back and inserted knowingly before possess, and I believe that would have fixed the problem. Possession was a felony previously, and I agree that that's excessive. It shouldn't be a felony. People who are having addiction issues need support services, but the legislature, unfortunately, is on a path to completely decriminalize. So without additional legislative action, we've moved out the penalty and brought it down to a civil infraction, which is the same level as a parking ticket. And I think the critical piece that is missing, the legislature didn't address, is when we, as an institution, decriminalized, failed to provide those support services. So we didn't put money into treatment facilities. So now a law enforcement officer can pull someone over, they're in possession, they won't be arrested. There's a 3 deferrals required before that person can even be arrested in American law.
Thank you. Janty, what are your thoughts on the Blake decision and its potential impact on legalization of previously illegal substances?
Well, we have seen in the past that decriminalizing substances that individual citizens want to use has cut down on crime and corruption. Definitely doesn't mean they're good or healthy. So I certainly support treatment centers and dealing with the root causes of what gets people into addictive situations like that. So I'm not necessarily opposed to the decriminalization of it, but we certainly need to address our society's social problems that come with drugs.
Thank you. The next question, also from the audience, and I will remind our audience members to keep sending them, and we will get as many as we can. We're going to start with Jan on this question, and it is, what is your position on parental rights to approve of what gender pronouns their children prefer to use?
Well, I don't think that's for minor children. The parents certainly do have influence and something to say about that. It's interesting. Yeah, raising children is not easy, and the parents should be able to seek support from their clergy and medical professionals and their children's teachers. That our laws are set up so that minor children are under the care of their adult parents. So I don't see that as really, I don't understand that being an issue. You hope the parents are going to deal with it with compassion and understanding and educate themselves.
And Jan, you still have some time if you want to expound on that, or if not, we can move to.
Feel free to move on. Thank you.
Okay, Skyler, to you, same question.
I don't think the question referred to schools, but I'm guessing that maybe that was the intent of the question. So I think I somewhat agree with Jan that a minor is a responsibility of parents at home. When a child is under the supervision of the school district, that gets a little bit more tricky. I think parents still need to be involved in decisions for their child, and the schools need to respect that. Government needs to respect that. I think an important focus, probably the most important focus for us as legislators and educators, is to ensure that the learning environment is safe. And so I worked on a bill that was directed at bullying in schools, specifically trans students, and making sure that resources are available for, maybe that's what the family is choosing to do, and we need to make sure that the child is supported. So I think involving parents and collaborating with parents is number one, and then for the school to make sure that there is no bullying happening and that the educational environment remains safe and productive for students. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. We're going to switch gears. We're going to tackle a topic that has been of great concern for many in our valley, certainly in this legislative district. And it is simply to Skyler first, how will you help with the affordable housing crisis?
Yeah, I think that's obviously we'd have it solved if it was easy. But I'm concerned about the unintended costs associated with construction is one. The State Building Code Council has too much power, in my opinion, to create regulations for building standards that lead to tens and tens of thousands of dollars in additional construction cost. So that's one way that we price people out of buying or building a house. So, I mean, that's a type of regulation, I guess, that I'm very aware of. I think zoning conversation and growth is kind of a different conversation. And then overall, like living standards for people, and are people able to become employed and have a living wage, a living income, which is kind of more of like an educational issue. So I don't think there's an easy answer for that, but I think my first focus would be on reducing the government red tape that leads to increased costs for construction.
Thank you. Jan, to you, what are your ideas about this topic of great concern?
Well, I was fascinated reading about the accessory dwelling units, the rezoning that took place as a result of collaboration between the city of Walla Walla and planners there. And it was a study that when Riley Clubb was on the city council, I believe he started. And that seems to be a really successful way to, like, we don't need these huge homes. You can place really nice sized and comfortable dwellings and tucked in. There's lots of, as I've been out canvassing, I've found lots of these little homes that are, they kind of had to make their own little street that's more like a driveway, but you walk back into a sweet little house or apartment building. The study that Common Roots did, I believe that there is, that Community Council did, and as a result, started the nonprofit trust Common Roots. And I just think there's a lot of ingenuity out there, and we just need to keep exploring all the possibilities.
Great, thank you. We are trying to work through as many topics as we can, and this one is unrelated to that. So switching gears and pivoting here, we're going to start with Jan on this one. What, if any, are your legislative plans relating to climate change? And how will you ensure that this legislative district is ready for the transition to electric vehicles and other green infrastructure?
Well, I did just listen to Scott Peters' presentation from Columbia REA to Rotary last week. And there's a lot of, definitely a lot of things to consider. But what I feel we've been dealing with is, as I mentioned earlier, about kicking the can down the road. I know that people are pretty adamant about the deadlines and goals that we've set for ourselves as far as getting away from coal and fossil fuels and natural gas. And but I think we can't just keep ignoring it and waiting for something to happen. And there's also a lot of controversy over extra tax on using more carbon fuels and stuff, but it's kind of like the carrot or the stick. Do you give incentives to corporations and individuals for helping, or do you end up having to kind of add some sort of fee they have to pay? We just simply cannot keep ignoring it. And I believe that if we set the standard, set some goals, we will rise to the occasion, and people will come up with some creative, ingenious ideas on how to mitigate that.
Thank you, Jan. Skyler, to you, your plans, if any, regarding transition to a green infrastructure.
Yeah, if we're talking about air quality, I think that that's something that the federal government should lead on. The state of Washington has been, I think, going too far in driving up costs inadvertently as we try to reduce carbon emissions. But we all know that, I mean, air is circulating in the globe all the time. And what we do in Washington state is such a small percentage of emissions that it's an important issue, but it's just not appropriate, in my view, to try to tackle it on a state level. It's just not efficient. It's not productive. So I think what we could do is there's an account in as part of the capital budget. It's called the Public Works Assistance Account, and the city of Walla Walla has used it before. It's a very low interest loan program that the state operates for municipalities. And unfortunately, the legislature keeps coming in, and it's a revolving account. It's self-sustaining if we would just not touch it and leave it alone. And as the money comes in, it gets reloaned out, and is a great financing tool for local jurisdictions. So I think infrastructure could be built for like EVs, for example, using that account. Maybe that's something we could visit, making that accessible to cities across the state to provide infrastructure for EVs. But we need to protect that account, and it's under threat every single session.
Thank you. And there's so much more to discuss, and thank you to the audience for their very thoughtful questions. We are at the end of our time now, so we must move on to closing statements. Jan, you have the floor.
I'm running because all families deserve access to affordable childcare. Too often, there are limited options for working parents. Access to childcare has been an ongoing problem for communities in Eastern Washington, and the pandemic further exposed those gaps and made existing inequalities worse. I know the struggle firsthand. For a few tough years in my career, I worked as a single mom to support my family. I never imagined that decades later, our communities would still be struggling with a shortage of affordable childcare. We need healthcare that is in the reach of everyone. I'm a firm believer that healthy people make healthy communities. There are countries that provide healthcare for everyone. We do not here because we allow corporate profits to take priority over humans. The same applies to the health of our planet. I'm not a politician. What I am is someone who cares about the future of our communities. I'm running for this position because I can't sit back and watch the American dream afforded my generation disappear for those coming after me. Your vote for me is a vote for leadership that prioritizes listening to you and your family. We'll work together to create solutions that improve the lives of Eastern Washington residents. I would be honored to have your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Skyler, your closing statement, please.
That went by so fast. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope it was informative for everybody listening. If there are follow-up questions, my email is skyler@skylerroot.com, my campaign email. So happy to answer further questions that way. Some of my priorities, if I'm reelected in the next session, will be expanding meals in school. I just got an email from OSPI today about that, and I've always felt that that's something the schools should be doing. So I'm going to be working on that, increasing special ed funding. Water is always an important issue, and there's a lot of work to be done in the Walla Walla Basin. I'm proud of my tribal relationship and the work that has been done over the last couple of years. That's going to have a huge price tag on it as we work on those issues. So that'll be upcoming. I have always had an open door policy. Any constituent that asks for a meeting gets one. That's been my policy. And so if reelected, I'll continue that. and kind of under the umbrella of bipartisanship and collaboration that, again, I think has been effective for all of us. And my bill success rate is high, and I think it's a result of that. So again, it's been such an honor to represent this district for the last 4 years, and I'm asking for your vote again because I love the work, love serving the district, and hope to have another 2 years doing that.
Thank you. Kyle, to you.
Okay, thank you, Jen and Skyler. Very well said. Thank you to our audience for the wonderful questions that came in. There were quite a few that we were unable to get to. Unfortunately, we cannot really recycle those questions because our other 2 races are very different in nature and in scope. So Skyler and Jan, if you could please hide your video now, and we will invite the candidates who are running for county prosecutor to share their video and come online. So just to remind everyone again, utilize that Q&A feature at the bottom. It is a little bit of a shift for us now. Instead of asking questions on the state level, these are more specific questions and only here for Walla Walla County. So please submit those questions using the Q&A feature. Okay, Bertha, thanks.
Thank you. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Gabe. These are the candidates for Walla Walla County Prosecuting Attorney. This is a race to replace the retiring Walla Walla County Prosecutor Jim Nagel. We want to say thank you for your many years of distinguished service. We are going to start with opening statements. We are going to start first with Gabe Acosta. You have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Gabe Acosta, and I am running for Walla Walla County Prosecutor. I'm honored to be here to answer questions and to share a little bit about the values and principles that guide me. My campaign for county prosecutor is not just a natural progression for a career prosecutor, but one where I can continue to uphold standards critical to a healthy community. I have been a prosecutor for 34 years, and I have deep and broad experience applying these standards. Accountability is one such standard. I am tough on crime, and my history shows that. Accountability for those who commit crimes keeps our citizens safe. And while it is often overlooked, holding an offender accountable can also lead to opportunities to improve their choices in the future. In addition, accountability is also essential for the prosecutor's office. We must ensure that we are providing citizens with every protection available and that we follow the law ourselves. We must make careful and wise decisions. We must not shirk from our responsibilities or apply accountability selectively, which brings me to another essential standard, integrity. Those who work for our community must ensure its needs come first, which is why this office must work with absolute integrity to protect the constitutional rights of every citizen. I am committed to building robust communication with crime victims for case resolution and focus my leadership on honesty, fairness, and dedication. We must also be transparent. To meet this goal, I plan to hold open town hall meetings such as this, where I am accessible to you and can answer questions and concerns that you have. That also provides the opportunity to communicate current trends and issues in the criminal justice system so we can learn, stay informed, and work together as a community. If elected, I will continue to work with the same dedication and energy as I have for the last 34 years and faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of my office for the well-being of this incredible community we call home.
Thank you. Michelle Morales, your opening statement.
Good evening. My name is Michelle Morales, and I am running for Walla Walla County Prosecuting Attorney. I was born and raised in Walla Walla, and after law school, I knew I wanted to come back to the community that helped raise me. As a deputy prosecuting attorney, I handle cases in district court, adult, and juvenile superior court. I review and charge the police reports that are submitted to our office, and additionally, I am part of the adult recovery court team. As a little girl, I knew I wanted to be a prosecutor, and I remember seeing Jim Nagel's picture at the grocery store, not realizing that those were just posters to try to prevent people from writing bad checks. My drive to be a prosecutor stems from my lived experiences growing up in this community, and that shapes my top priorities of public safety, equity, and transparency. I knew that as a prosecutor, I wanted to focus on those that are impacted by the system as victims of crime and those that are victims of a broken system. I bring a new perspective on the role of a prosecuting attorney that includes finding alternatives to incarceration in order to hold offenders accountable. I strongly believe that the best way to serve is through requiring justice and confidence within the system. Achieving these goals helps ensure that the community's voice is always heard. Justice means holding violent offenders accountable and obtaining sentences that ensure public safety. Justice means looking at ways to reduce crime in our community. Justice means, and community safety requires, thinking about both the crime itself and its underlying causes. To serve and protect, we must both prosecute and prevent. As your next elected prosecutor, I will collaborate between our office, law enforcement, and community partners to best serve the changing needs of this community. I will work to improve resources for our juvenile offenders and evaluate alternatives in response to nonviolent crime where appropriate. I will continue my commitment to update the prosecutor's office so that we can advance our case management, victim services, and our resources. It is the obligation of the prosecutor's office to commit to public safety by not only through accountability through convictions, but also reductions in crime. Together, we can make our community safer. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions tonight.
Thank you to you both. Our first question, and we're going to start with Gabe on this one, is if you are elected, well, first of all, tell us, in your opinion, the current state of the Walla Walla County Prosecutor's Office, and if you are elected, what process improvement changes, if any, would you implement in your first 100 days as prosecutor?
Well, we actually have a pretty good office right now. We've made some recent changes. Each of the deputy prosecutors, the criminal ones, have their own legal assistants. I think the big problem, or I suppose the biggest challenge that we have right now is our caseload. I know for myself, and I can't speak for all of the other deputies, but I probably have at least 20 cases still in a queue waiting for trial. And so one of the things that I would try to do is to make sure that each of the deputies and myself are collaborating before pre-trial so that we know which trials need to go and that a trial will go instead of continuances, as often happens, and a trial doesn't go in a week that it could go. I've done 6 trials already this week, finished one today out of the 8 trials that our office has done. We could have done more, I believe, and I hope to be able to make it so that we can cut the big backlog that we have in the coming year.
Thank you. Michelle, to you, your opinion on the current state of the prosecutor's office and what changes, if any, would you implement in the first 100 days if elected?
Thank you. That is a great question. Our current state of our prosecutor's office is that what COVID taught us is that we are behind where we should be in regards to technology when it comes to prosecution. We did not have the ability to work remotely until that started, and we did update our systems enough in order to do so. And I was integral in that process. We all now have surfaces or laptops in order to work remotely or bring those to court so we can have access to our case files. We also now have the ability to participate with victims in a more accurate and efficient way. So since I've been at the prosecutor's office, I have reorganized the office so each deputy has their own legal assistant. I have trained those legal assistants. I created a training program and for our case management and spent 2 weeks training all of our legal assistants so that they could be efficient on processing cases for our deputy prosecuting attorneys. I've also advanced our victim services unit by having 2 victim advocates dedicated to just reaching out to victims and how we contact those victims. Originally, it was just that we focused on sending victims letters. Now we actually contact victims at the start of the case. We set up meet and greets between the victims as well as our deputy prosecuting attorneys and prepare them throughout the whole entire case process. In the first 100 days, I would move towards us becoming a paperless office, which is the next steps in prosecution.
Thank you. We have a lot of audience questions coming in about alternative sentencing and to try to capture those themes, the question is this, and we're going to start with Michelle on this. What factors would guide your discretion as a prosecutor, such as in situations where you have the authority to recommend probation or drug counseling and rehabilitation in lieu of jail time for an offender? The second part of that is, do you think these alternative sentencing methods are effective, or do they further contribute to a revolving door for offenders?
That is a great question. So as I stated, I'm part of the adult recovery court team that has focused on actually using treatment in lieu of jail time. That does not mean that an offender does not have any jail time. It just means that we are a treatment-based court. So our participants come in and they are generally in our program for at least 14 months, if not longer, in order to complete through the 5 different phases. And it allows participants to be more pro-social so that they address the underlying cause of why they are committing these crimes, which is either substance abuse or mental health or a combination of both, rather than just having a revolving door of incarceration. I think that those are great options for our community going forward. What we see in the prosecutor's office are a lot of repeat offenders that do not address the underlying causes. And so we have somebody that comes up with 1 case and then at the end of it ends up with 4. And we need to stop that revolving door. What also that means that we need to have better access to our treatment facilities. Right now, we basically have 1 substance abuse organization, but we need to reach out to other community partners to see if we can increase that. And I forgot the second part of that question, but what we have been working for in our community and in our prosecutor's office is finding alternatives, because it is important that we address the underlying causes. We all know that our system requires that we now do that and move forward to holding accountable offenders in other ways than just.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm sorry you got cut off there at the end. Gabe, same question. Factors that would guide your discretion in recommending these alternative sentencing solutions. And do you think they work, or is it a revolving door for offenders?
Well, it's yes and no. These treatment programs do work, mostly for the older generation, that like they've got to be maybe in their 40s. Sometimes the younger ones do, but we need long-term treatment. The ARC program that Ms. Morales talked about is a long-term treatment program. The state-run programs like the DOSA, that's the drug offender sentencing option for those that would be potentially facing prison, low prison, or longer-term jail, it's too short. It's like from 3 to 6 months, and for a effective program to really be successful, it's got to be close to a year, minimum of 6 months, 9 months, a year. I've had some defendants who jumped the gun before coming into court, got into year-long treatment programs and were successful. And I dismissed those charges because they did what we wanted them to do. I would try to reach out to our legislators to encourage the legislature to fund better programs, more programs to hit the addictions. It is a lot of turnaround even within ARC and the DOSA program. So we need just more treatment and longer treatment.
Thank you. The next question is regarding a theme that you've probably heard in the course of your campaign over the last couple of months, and it's this notion of getting tough on crime. The question from the audience, and we're starting with Gabe on this, is please tell us, if elected, how you would support and foster safety in our community.
So I have probably had, just because of how long I've been there, some of the more complicated or difficult cases, the career criminals. For instance, out of the 6 trials that I've done this year, a couple of the defendants were our career criminals. One had 4 open cases, another had, I think, 3 open cases. And those kinds of cases generally have to go to trial because they don't want to plead guilty. They don't want to have a deal unless it's a really sweet deal, which I'm not willing to give. And so I guess I'm one that sometimes maybe is considered a hard-nosed prosecutor because I'm willing to be aggressive and not back down or reduce charges just to clear the plate. Some of those cases have got to be taken care of so that our community stays safe. And I have told people as I've doorbelled that my history is that I'm willing to go to trial. Trial's not the answer for everything, but for these kinds of offenders, that is oftentimes the only answer.
Thank you. Now, your response to this notion of being tough on crime, and how will you support community safety?
One of my main priorities is keeping this community safe. And that is done in multiple of ways. It is not just done in holding offenders accountable through convictions. What we have to focus on now is how we find ways to reduce our crime in our community. And reductions in crime is based on expanding our plea negotiations in our office. And we need to have better standards and guidelines within our plea negotiations for our office. That would require us to have a manual that we can follow as prosecutors so that our community is aware of how we negotiate cases based on evidentiary concerns and offender history. We also need to have a filing standard manual so that when case reports are referred to us from law enforcement, they also know when a case is legally sufficient and when we might require additional investigation. And also, what we need to do is expand our treatment alternatives, as already mentioned. The revolving door of people coming in and out of our county jail or having more than one file or more than one case charged against them. That means that we need to expand our adult recovery court. We need to expand our DOSA programs and reach out to our community partners so that we can collaboratively react to when people are charged with crimes and how we treat that underlying cause, those underlying causes. And also what we need to focus on is we need more deputy prosecuting attorneys so that we can handle our caseload, so that we can efficiently manage what we're doing so that our negotiations really focus on community safety.
Thank you. I'm going to move now to bail. And Michelle, we're going to start with you on this question. We've seen other states change bail standards, particularly making changes to cash bail. The question from the audience is, generally people are held in jail because they can't afford to get out. What alternatives are there? And we're starting with Michelle here.
So bail and pretrial release is something that has been difficult for our office for a long time. And that is because it is reliant on what the court decides to do. So there are two factors when determining whether or not somebody is to be held in custody or released on their own personal recognizance. And that is community safety as well as flight risk. Generally, bail is not imposed simply because somebody cannot afford it. It's based on those two factors that the court considers and whether or not there's least restrictive alternatives to release or to bail. And so in our community, unfortunately, we only have one or two programs. We have our EHM or electronic home monitoring program, as well as our Sentry program, which requires offenders to either have an ankle bracelet so that we can monitor where they are, or to have daily check-ins with our community supervision officer to see whether or not they are using. And that is just not a sufficient way to monitor their progress on pretrial release. We definitely need to expand those programs. We need to work with our community partners as well as our Department of Corrections DOC program who supervises our offenders as well, so that we can create other pretrial release programs that will require offenders to check in daily, to go to WorkSource or other employment opportunities, to make more pro-social choices rather than just being on pretrial release without any accountability.
Thank you. Gabe, same question, potential alternatives to bail.
Well, EHM or electronic home monitoring is one of the options that we have. I think probably the majority of our offenders are eligible for that. We may not have enough bracelets to go around. So they're either just given release, house arrest type of thing, or maybe low cash bail. And one of the things, so a couple of the defendants I had earlier this year, they cut their bracelets off, a couple of them, and yet they were still then allowed to either get back on a bracelet or then just released. And my thought is that those people need to be held accountable for what they did. They obviously don't care about the release conditions, then they should be held pending trial. For people that, I think one of the issues is not having job opportunities for some of our offenders, and they can't afford bail. They can't afford a lot of things, and we need to have, we don't have enough jobs here, I think, for those kinds of offenders. But if we had work release, and not that they're being released from jail, but if we have work generated opportunities for those who are being charged so that they can start getting some skills to have a job when they are done with their criminal case, I think that would help society as a whole.
Thank you very much. We're moving right along. We're covering a variety of topics. The next topic is related to access to justice, access to quality legal representation. Starting with you, Gabe. In Walla Walla County, number one, how would you rate county citizens' access to legal help and the legal system? And number two, if you rate it poorly or otherwise insufficient, what can be done to provide wider and better access?
And I'm assuming this is just talking about in the criminal justice system, this whole arena. So in that vein, we have, I'm not going to count them off, but I think we have approximately 6 contracted defense attorneys that represent defendants in all aspects, the misdemeanors in district court, and then the felonies in superior court, and then after convictions, legal financial obligation violations, that kind of thing. I quite frankly think that for the most part, the defense legal community is top-notch. There's some that are new, they're learning, they're getting experience co-partnering with some of the more senior defense attorneys. You talk about being accessible to the public. I'm not quite sure how to answer that, other than every defendant who comes before the court, if they can't afford counsel, they're appointed one. And each of the ones that are appointed, they have to pass certain criteria. And I know that each of the ones that have a piece of the contract with the county, they're qualified. Some I think obviously, if you were to talk to all of them, some are way more experienced than others and perhaps are seen to do a more aggressive job. Others are learning. And the ones that don't do well, we're going to.
Very sorry there, Gabe, to cut off the end of your statement. Michelle, we're going to move to you. Same question. Your grade on access to justice, access to quality legal representation, and if it's poor, what are some suggestions to improve it?
So we have a very strong defense bar in this community. We have defense attorneys that range from 20 plus years of practice to just starting out. And they do learn from each other and collaborate with each other when it comes to representation. So we do have a strong representation. I think what we need to improve is that we need an additional courtroom. We are backlogged after COVID, and that is no surprise. So what we need to do in order to move cases through the system, which would be access to justice and adequate legal representation, is to have another courtroom and to have another judge to be present and get some of this backlog cases going. Sometimes we just can't find enough time to move cases either through trial or to a change of plea or negotiation or sentencing. We spend more time trying to work on that part of it in the 2 courtrooms that we do have, as well as the civil cases that they have to get through as well. Another way to improve our access to justice and legal representation is that we need more court-appointed interpreters. We only have 1 court-certified interpreter in this county for a county that is 40% Latino. We need to have more Spanish interpreters available to court so that we can make it through these cases. In addition to that, we do have the Northwest Justice Project that also helps in the civil capacity, which I think is a great program for our legal representation. So overall, we have a strong legal representation and access to justice in our community, but we do need to make some improvements.
Thank you. The next question from the audience has to do with prosecutorial discretion as it pertains to a defendant's immigration status. Michelle, we're going to start with you. What is your position on offenders with immigration issues? Do you take immigration issues into account when prosecuting them?
I think what's most important is to realize that all people are entitled to meaningful due process and competent legal representation, regardless of immigration status. That is a priority and a constitutional right in our system. When it comes to immigration status or just to an offender, we prosecute people when they need to be held accountable for breaking the law. That is a standard that we are held to. When we look at negotiating, and that's why we need to have stronger guidelines and plea negotiations so that we are making sure that we're taking into account all factors when it comes to an offender's history as well as the crime that have been committed. There are definitely crimes that people are held to a very higher standard, violent offenses, sex offenses. There are very little alternatives for those offenders, and they need to be held accountable to ensure that we are protecting the community. What we also need to understand is that all people make mistakes in some of these lower level nonviolent crimes, and we need to find those alternatives when it is appropriate, regardless of immigration status. So it's not a consideration when specific to when negotiating or prosecutorial discretion. It is something that we look at when we're looking at the offender as a whole person, rather than just focusing on one factor.
Gabe, to you, your thoughts on or your position with regards to prosecutorial discretion as it pertains to offenders' immigration status. And sir, I believe you are on mute.
Okay, thank you. My position through the years is that I look at the facts of the case. If I were to make a decision based solely on a person's immigration status, I think that would be unfair, not just to that person, but to the community as a whole. Because if I were to let's say, somebody who was delivering drugs go for something less because he would be facing immigration consequences, but not do the same thing for a natural citizen of this community, I think that would be considered discrimination. And so I have not made those kinds of decisions basing my charging and or resolution decisions based on a person's immigration status. Now, there may be some real mitigating circumstances in a particular case. I would have to look at that. It would have to be a pretty non-serious offense. But one of the things also that I've learned over the years is that I can't trust or decide what the federal government is actually going to do in a case. They may say they're going to deport in a case and never do, or they may say they're not going to deport in a case and then they decide to do so. I've had cases come back to me because of immigration status issues. And so I think the bottom line is that I have not taken immigration status into account when I'm making a prosecutorial decision, because that is otherwise.
Sorry. Gabe, thank you very much. So final question before we move on to our closing statements from each of you. This is a question that has appeared a couple of times from the audience, and it is the two of you work in the same office, your colleagues, you're running for the same position. One of you will be elected by voters to become the next Walwala County prosecutor. So starting with Gabe, how do you see working with your opponent if you are elected, or conversely, if you are not elected?
Well, you know, that's a really difficult question to answer, because it's really premature to say how I'm going to do something or not do something. There's 30 days left before the actual election. We have worked well together over the last 5 years that she's been in our office. I've not had any significant, actually any real difficulty with Ms. Morales. I think she's an excellent attorney in our office, done a great job. If circumstances are that one of us is elected and the other one not, and we're still in the same office, I like to think that there would still be a good rapport between the two of us, but that's speaking for myself.
Michelle, same to you, or same question to you.
Thank you. I also have valued the time that I've spent in the office with Mr. Acosta. We have worked well together. We have collaborated on cases, and we've worked through difficult cases, difficult legal questions, and that has been really important in my career in the prosecutor's office, as well as the collaboration within our office throughout my time. I think we can both say that we will work together regardless of the outcome of the election, and we will move forward on our office and making it the stronger place that it needs to be, and move forward to what its next generation will be for the Walla Walla County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, regardless of the outcome. We both have a desire to make the office better and stronger, and I think that is where we will go regardless of the outcome of the election.
Thank you. We move now to closing statements, something you both probably hear regularly. Michelle, you're going to start. You have the floor.
Thank you. First off, I would like to thank our sponsors, the Chamber, AAUW, and the Realtors Association for hosting this forum tonight. And thank you to everyone watching for the thoughtful questions to show that this community cares about the next generation of leaders for our county. My candidacy began this year, but I have already been making changes to the prosecutor's office to strengthen the relationship between our office, law enforcement, and the community. I have reorganized the office so our deputy prosecuting attorneys can have one dedicated legal assistant for adult felony caseload. I created a training protocol for all legal assistants to follow so case management is standardized and more efficient. I have drafted filing standards for reviewing cases when reports are received from law enforcement, so law enforcement can have a better understanding of when cases are legally sufficient and when we may request additional investigation. I've communicated with law enforcement administration to help prepare and train and advise on new case law when it has come down from the legislature or the appellate courts. I am the best candidate for this position because I will work harder and do more for you. This is my home and has been my home for most of my life. I wake up every morning fighting to make it a better place and safer for my kids and for all of you. I am the same age as Jim Nagel when he was appointed as prosecutor. If you vote for me, you are voting for the future of this county, for the change we need after 30+ years. Vote for me to start the process of transforming the prosecutor's office, as it is not a matter of what we have always done, but what we can do moving forward. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about my campaign and my vision for the Walla Walla County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. I ask for your vote to invest in my campaign, and most importantly, I ask for the honor of serving you. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Gabe Acosta, to you.
Thank you. And thank you to all who participated in making this happen. During my opening statement, I explained why I am running for county prosecutor. I want to use this closing to give you a little information about myself. I went to college here where I met my wife, Cindy, who grew up in this valley. I went on to law school at the University of Washington and returned here to Walla Walla for my first job working for a private attorney for 1.5 years before starting with the prosecutor's office in 1988. During those first few years, Cindy and I were blessed with 2 children. Just a few years later, I handled a case which would alter the lives of my family. It involved a couple of children as victims, and long story short, Cindy and I had the opportunity to foster one of those children after the conclusion of that case. That ultimately led to our becoming full-fledged foster parents, and we ended up taking in several hundred children over the last 25 years. In the midst of that experience, we adopted 8 of those children. I am proud to say that all of our children are successful and doing well, with 3 still at home, 2 teens and a 9-year-old. I have also coached Little League soccer for the last 20 years, in large part because of our children who grew to love soccer like I did, or at least I think they did. Recently, we had added onto our house so that Cindy's parents could move in with us to make it easier for us to care for them when they get older, making us one of those growing multi-generational families. My purpose for sharing these bits and pieces of my life is to show that I am invested in this great community of Walla Walla County. I want to continue to help make this county safe for all of our children and all of our grandparents and those in between. With your vote, I will commit to making sure that our valley remains one where we want to come home to. I thank you.
Okay, Gabriel and Michelle, thank you so much for running for this office and for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you also to the audience for the wonderful questions that came in. We'll ask our candidates for prosecutor now, if you could please hide your video, and the candidates who are running for county commission, if you could please share your video. So once again, the questions that were asked to the prosecutor are not the same ones that should go to the county commissioners. So please submit new questions using that Q&A feature there at the bottom. This is our final race for the night. Let me see here, make sure our candidates are up and ready to go. Okay, it looks like they're ready. So Bertha, please take it away.
Thank you, Kyle. These are the candidates for Walla Walla County Commissioner District 3. They're running to fill a seat that has been occupied by Greg Tompkins, who has opted to not run for re-election. The candidates tonight are Gunnar Fulmer, Danielle Garbe Reeser, and Darren Goble. We are going to start with Gunnar Fulmer for your opening statement. Go ahead.
There we go. How about that? Thank you very much. So my name is Gunnar Fulmer. I am a lifelong resident here in Walla Walla and Walla Walla Valley. I have been serving the city and county for the last 28 years. I have been serving the public since the day I turned 18 years old, and I never stopped serving. I went in the U.S. military, came back, and started at the airport fire department, and then on to the city fire department as a paramedic firefighter, and then on to the police department, where I'm currently the administrative sergeant for the police department. Serving our county and city is really important to me, and I've invested a lot of myself into that. I've always treated everybody fairly, and done my best out there to make sure that we're respecting everybody, no matter what level they're living at or what their status is. And the city has given me a lot of tools to move into this county commissioner position. I've been through internal investigation classes. I've been part of the bargaining units. I understand what the bargaining, how that works. I've been through a lot of different things that I think will help me be a great county commissioner and help serve our county and citizens. And I ask that you think of me when it comes time to vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We go next to Danielle Garbe Reeser.
This spring, I had a full plate. My father-in-law, Yancey Reeser, had just died, and I just launched a new business. So I was proud to support John Haidt as the Democrat in this race, and so disappointed when he didn't make it through the primary. Washington state law does not allow us to vote in John, so we had to have another Democrat run as a write-in candidate, or we'd have to choose between two Republicans. You told me we needed another choice on the ballot, and I agreed. As a kid growing up in Moses Lake, I worried about the Cold War and became a diplomat because I wanted to defend our democracy. That job of defending our democracy is just as critical right here in Walla Walla. This year, our commissioners disregarded our redistricting deadlines. If we hadn't mobilized to protest, they would not have had a public process to engage voters. With only 3 commissioners making decisions for our whole county and a budget over $100 million, we need more public oversight. We need to elect someone with a track record of engaging the public and working collaboratively with partners. As CEO of Sherwood Trust, I made our work transparent and accessible, and I'll do the same for our county. Events like the Supreme Court throwing out Roe v. Wade in June reminded us that we must defend our rights at every level of government. Commissioners oversee public health. Women from Boise and beyond are fleeing here for access to abortions and reproductive health services. With your support, we will defend the freedom for us to make our own decisions about our health care. I am standing up to run now because we can't afford to sit out this election, and we literally can't afford it. Commissioners gave themselves a 19% pay raise, so their salaries will be over $99,000 in 2025 for a part-time job. I'm rejecting that raise. A vote for me is a vote for sound financial management and for a trustworthy and effective ambassador for our county. I'm Danielle Garbe Reeser, your write-in candidate for.
I'm sorry, Danielle, we ran out of time there. Darren, to you.
All right, well, thank you, Kyle and Chess and Bertha for hosting this. It's an honor to be here. I appreciate our candidates that are running. I too am a lifelong resident of Walla Walla County, and it's been my driving passion to help the public, to do what it takes to make our home better. This is our home. I've spent over 33 years on our volunteer fire department, starting out as a volunteer firefighter, working my way up through as a EMT, and I'm a commissioner as well, working commissioner. And it's means a lot to me. I see the dangers of Highway 12. I've lived it. I live it every day. We live just a mile off the highway, and it's a big concern to me. I've spent many years as self-employed, and budgets are a big part of my life. It's nothing that I really enjoy, but it's a necessary evil, and I'm dedicated a large portion of my time to figuring out creative ways to make it in this industry of agriculture. It's not an easy deal. It's been a lifelong passion to serve the public, and I've been involved with school boards. I've got 15 years between public and private, and that's opened me up to how county management works, how county budgets work. And then when I joined the Fair Board, that gave me another delve into the Walla Walla County itself, more personal. So it's been a lifelong passion, and it's a very necessary step in moving to this next step, is being a county commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to get to our first question. We're going to start with Gunnar Fulmer on this one. It's regarding the impact of this position. The question is, the Board of County Commissioners is the legislative authority for Walla Walla County. And if elected, you would serve in a role akin to a city manager or a chief administrator. Given the weight of your vote on a 3-member board, please explain how you would inform your decision-making on issues with significant potential impacts.
Okay. Well, I think it's really important, for people to realize that obviously, as commissioners, we're not going to know everything. So with that being said, if you're not knowledgeable in the subject at hand, then you need to go out and make yourself knowledgeable. That means you need to go out and seek the people that have those answers, and not just talk to one or two, but several, so that you can educate yourself on that issue at hand. And then you need to do your own education on it as well, so that when it comes down to that time to make that vote, you have been educated, you have spoken to the people out there that are the experts in that area, and then you make your decision based on what's best for the entire county and the majority of the citizens in our county. And I think if you go down that road and you follow those steps, you can't really go wrong there.
Thank you very much. We go next to Danielle. Danielle, how would you inform your decision-making on big issues, big decisions?
One of the things that I think is really important with having 3 commissioners is that each commissioner needs to bring knowledge and experience to the table. Commissioner Mayberry brings great law enforcement experience. Todd Kimball brings great farming and accounting experience. And so having that third person bring a different skill set like I do of community knowledge and experience from Sherwood Trust of working with all of our local nonprofits and our cities and solving things collaboratively. So one is the knowledge you bring, the other is what you learn by listening. So we need the commission to be more involved in getting the public voices there so that people can come and feel comfortable voicing their concerns, that people are aware of what the county is doing and how it affects their lives. And so we need to really listen to the people on the ground who are most affected by the issues that we're discussing. We also have the opportunity to listen to experts in particular fields, right, that we can call ahead of a meeting or listen to ahead of time or read up on. But I think it's really important that we think carefully about who's affected by our decisions, who's not in the room when we make decisions, and that we consider all sides of an issue before we weigh in on it.
Thank you, Danielle. And Darren, you have the floor on this question.
Sure. So relying on a lot of experience, having been down this road in other facets is very important. And the relationships that I've built with other departments and other officials, that's where a lot of this expertise is going to come from. It's their departments, it's their office. Also, the networking I have with, I know the state legislators. I've worked a lot with state employees with different aspects of the new 4-lane of Highway 12. I've been very intimate with that in the last 4 years. That's where we go. But just doing the research and being able to reach out to those in our community that are the experts. There's different people that's got better skill sets on certain issues, but it's just being able to go out and ask those questions and getting the honest answers that you need to make the proper decisions. Is everybody going to be happy with them? No, but we do the best we can for our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going now to the chat. There are quite a few questions referencing that 19% pay raise that the Walwala County Commissioners, the current Walwala County Commissioners unanimously voted in the affirmative for themselves and for other elected county officials. The question from the audience is, do you feel that this position is appropriately compensated? And what are your thoughts on that May vote? And we're going to start with Danielle on that question.
Well, I raised this issue because I obviously think it's plenty high enough now at $82,000 for a part-time job, and I don't think it should be increased, certainly not by 19%. I think more broadly going forward on salaries, especially for the commission, but also to be fair to the other department heads and groups that are set by salary, we need to have a clear, transparent benchmark. This was set on a Superior Court judge's salary. That is not something that's related either with education or experience to how the commissioner's job is done. We need to make sure we're professionally benchmarking against other counties, against a set transparent list of jobs and criteria. A lot of counties will do a public commission that might hear it. There's other ways that it can be done, but I think commissioners making that decision to give themselves such a huge pay raise at a time when people are really hurting shows that it's a process that's just out of touch with the needs of our county. It is a really important job. I know that's why we're all running for it, but the commissioners have to make tough choices about where the priorities are. And I don't think the priorities should be the pocketbooks of the commissioners when there are so many needs in our communities. There are many better places to put that money, and that's what I would be arguing for.
Darren, next to you, what are your thoughts on this hot topic?
Well, first of all, the county commissioner job is not a part-time job. They're in their office 2 days a week where they have their meetings, but the research that it takes to be well informed on this subject is massive. Just knowing what I've gone through in the years with the smaller roles I've served, to do the proper research, it takes time, and it's you can't say it's just a part-time job. That's quite the understatement. I know just experience says that to get up to speed on this, especially when it comes to doing budgets and that, I mean, it's just a massive amount of time you've got to spend. And I think, whatever factor they ran to get this percentage, I don't have the answer for that. I haven't looked into it. And I think that's important before people, just make a general comment about, oh, it's a 19%. What led up to that? Were there pay raises or cost of living increases that did not happen? Does this affect other departments too and offices? So it's just, were there pay freezes? We don't know. So until we actually get down and find the root cause of all this, or what justified all this. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Gunnar, go ahead and round us out on this question.
Okay. I'd like to clarify something real quick. I've heard this from a lot of people, and I keep hearing it over and over again, but a lot of people are keep making the statement that the county commissioners have given themselves a raise. And I just want to make sure we're clear on this. None of the sitting commissioners are able to get to this raise unless they are reelected. So none of the sitting commissioners will touch this 19% increase unless they're reelected. And I want to make sure people understand that. So they're not actually giving themselves a raise. The raise is for future commissioners. As far as the 19%, I know it's on that sliding scale with the top Superior Court judges. I'm not sure, when that was implemented or how exactly that works. As far as the part-time job, I think it's a lot more than a part-time job. I think it's important for people to understand that. I know they have their meetings the first 2 days, and then there's a lot of meetings that come after that, and there's a lot of meeting up with the citizens, and we should be doing all those things. And when you're the top of the county, that is your job, to be out there leading by example. So I think they're putting in a lot more hours than people think that, that's going on out there. So thank you.
Thank you. The next question, and we're going to start with Gunnar on this one. It's a two-part question. What do you see as the most pressing needs for infrastructure or capital projects in the county? Please be specific. And number two, if new resources were available, what one area of county services would you feel needs the most additional resources?
Okay, starting with the beginning of that, capital improvements. I know they have a fairly large project that's going on right now, right next to the courthouse, and it's going to expand district court out. They're going to move district court over to that area, and that's going to help. And that's a pretty large project that's going on that is definitely needed. I keep hearing from people that they would like to see another judge so that we can get things through our judicial system a little bit quicker. I agree, that would be nice. So that might be something to look at in the future as well. Off the cuff, I don't have a plan for that, but it's something we should be looking at. Also, we need to be looking and starting to build a plan of what we're going to do with our sheriff's office and our jail. Both of them are outdated. They're too small. The jail in particular is not safe. The way it's designed is outdated. Most of your correctional institutions now are built completely different so that you can use less correction staff, but have a safer facility. So those are two that just come to mind off the top of my head. The second part of that question, I apologize.
Which area of county services would you devote the additional resources to if you could?
Towards comprehensive health, mental health, for sure. They need some help. They're drowning. Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle, same question, your priorities.
One of the biggest challenges, certainly in the infrastructure space, is just the county has a tremendous job to maintain all of the roads and bridges. They've done an awesome job of doing that, but we know there are key pieces like this last phase of Highway 12, the phase 8, that we need to make sure we're getting outside funding to complete that work and bring it into the rest of the road system. We also need to be working closely with the port and looking at issues of sewer capacity, certainly as Burbank is growing, and to make sure that the Pasco access continues to be possible there. Issues of water continue to be key as well for all of our infrastructure growth and planning. And part of that is certainly the Mill Creek Channel. Again, we're also working on making sure that that project gets fully funded and completed, since that's a major security issue going through our community. And as we think about sort of more the facilities side, as Gunnar was mentioning, certainly lots of the buildings that need help. One of the huge ones is the dispatch facility center. Like, we should not have an all glass building next to the tallest tower on town and the busiest road and over a creek. And so there have been plans underway to think about how we move that. And I think we should be expediting. We need quality emergency management and dispatch services moved together and done as quickly as possible so that that remains a safe space.
Thank you. And Darren, to you to round out this question, your priorities.
Sure. This is the bad thing about being last, because boy, people nail the bullet points here, and Gunnar nailed it with our needs for our that we've got with the sheriff's office. I mean, it's terrible what you see down there, and the infrastructure of our roads. Having worked, I spent 2 years with the road department in Walla Walla County, and so I've got to live the life. I've seen what needs to be done. I have a lot of connections with the road department, so I keep updated on that as well. It's very important. I drive the roads a lot, as with farm equipment and trucks and all that. It's nice that we've made some strides with our roads and bridges. It's moving right along. We do have a need for for more law enforcement. You know, we're so out undermanned in the Burbank area, as has been brought up in other discussions, but that's very important, you know, as well. There's so many things that are important. But that's just some of those off the top of my head. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Moving now to another question from the audience. This has to do with redistricting. And this is an issue that the Curtin County Board picked up earlier this year. We're going to start with Darren on this question. And the question is, Washington's Voting Rights Act prohibits county commissioners from drawing district boundaries in ways that, quote, dilute the rights of protected classes, unquote. Do you believe that the current districts meet that standard? If so, why? If not, why not? And how would you modify them?
You know, I was at the redistricting meetings along with other folks. You know, we as a resident, my personal opinion is that the way they have it set up now is fair, because we've got urban, suburban, and rural all represented by each commissioner, so that I have a vested interest in what's happening in the city of Walla Walla or College Place, as well as the people that the commissioner from District 1 would be able to have the same vested interest in people out in the rural area. So it's important that we all have a equal playing field as far as the amount of residents, whether the different classes that we have, you know, rural, urban, and that, and having a protected class, maybe that's a little subjective. Growing up out here in the country and where I did, we had, you know, very diverse class of people. I mean, we've got their Hispanic population as well, and I've grown up with many of these people and family. I raised in a bilingual household, so I know all too well about this. Thanks.
Danielle, next to you, your thoughts regarding the district boundaries.
One of the big challenges in the process was first that we just disregarded the deadlines. The commissioners blew past the end of last year's deadline. So many of us organized and said we needed to have at least a process so that there could be public input into it. And there was a transparent process. People were able to come and participate in meetings. The piece that didn't happen around protected class, which is not a subjective issue, it's a legal standard, and the Voting Rights Act is Washington state law that we would be required to follow as county commissioners, and that we need to make sure that that's a factor that's considered as part of the redistricting process. The reality is in Walla Walla County that we do not have a majority district yet. We had this issue, was a legal issue in Franklin County and Yakima County, because they could draw areas that in their counties would have been majority Latino districts. That's not the population base here, but we should have been looking more closely at the numbers in our county, and we should have had a process that was held with Spanish language resources. The law requires that if you have 5% of your population speaks a different language, that you should provide services in that. And so it's one of the reasons going forward that I want to make sure we have English and Spanish language services for the county's work, for the website, for the services we provide in offices. That happens occasionally in some offices, but it needs to be the default that we do that in all the offices so that everyone feels engaged.
Thank you. And finally, Gunnar, to you.
Yeah, so the redistricting meeting, I personally didn't see any issues with it. I know that the purpose behind it is to keep the numbers even across, excuse me, in each of the districts to make sure that the population is the same. And I agree with Danielle on the fact that we could work harder on getting more resources out there for our Latino community. But I have not seen personally any major downfalls with our county in that area. I could be missing something, but I think we're pretty well, we're taken care of, but there's always room to do better in that area. So that's definitely something that we can look at. But as far as just the redistricting went, I didn't see any issues with what their final decision on. I thought it looked fair and everything looked okay to me. So thank you.
Thank you. We are are going to have one final question, then we'll move on to closing statements. In the chat, there's a couple of questions regarding public safety and funding of law enforcement. The question is, and to Danielle first, how would you rate the health of the investment by the county in the county law enforcement and correctional system? And what, if anything, would you do to make any improvements?
One of the things that we've just seen repeated in the last week, whether with the heroism of Trooper Atkinson, with the scare that parents had at our schools this last week, is that we need to take public safety seriously, and we need to take care of all the people in our law enforcement, our emergency management systems who take care of us so that we can sleep well at night. So that is a job number one of the county commissioners. And I think it's really important that we listen to our law enforcement folks, to the sheriff directly, about what those needs are and see what can be met. Now, you know, every department is going to feel like they don't get enough. And so it's the job of the commissioners to really balance those needs, but certainly areas of true safety that has to be at the top of the table, you know, knowing that there's enough deputies. So if the law changes that you've got to have two in place to make an arrest, that's a conversation we need to have, both about staffing for the county, but also some advocacy we need to do in Olympia about how things are different here in rural areas. And those are the kinds of conversations that I'd want to be having to make sure we get the resources and support to our law enforcement. We're all so grateful for the work that they do here and the sacrifices that they and their families make for our communities, and they deserve the very best and respect and support and resources from all of us from the county level.
Thank you, Danielle. Gunnar, to you. How would you rate the health of our investment in law enforcement and corrections, and what changes would you make, if any?
Well, as most of you probably know, our current county commissioners have approved 2 more deputies pretty recently, which definitely helps. They still need a little bit more help in that area, but again, it's a tough deal because we also have to manage that budget. I had a great meeting with Commissioner Tompkins the other day, and he helped clarify a few things for me that I was not aware of. One of those was why are we sitting at a 25% reserve in our budget? And he helped me clarify that, which I appreciated. But yeah, there's been legislative changes in law enforcement, and officers are not allowed to make arrests by themselves other than exigent circumstances. And then that goes back to the next question: should our deputies be out there making even under exigent circumstances making arrests by themselves? That's putting them in extreme danger. Right now, currently, we call over Pasco and we call over Franklin County to assist our deputies, and that well's going to run dry. They have their own business over there, so we're going to have to get a little bit more proactive and get that cleaned up over there in Burbank. Again, you'd have to go through the budget. I don't have the answers on how to do that. I've had some great conversations. It's going to have to get looked at further, but we need to continue to just try to look at that and figure out what we can do.
And Darren, you have the last word on this question.
All right. So we've seen, you know, a few years ago at the fair when the sheriff's office brought together other organizations from across the state to help with the policing when we were starting to feel that we had gang problems. It was great. You know, you saw a huge influx of people in uniform, and it made us all feel, you know, that we were in a safe environment. You know, the lawlessness that we're seeing now it's got to be it's very unsettling. I did a ride along here a time ago with one of the sheriff's deputies, and just the amount of volume that they go through in a night. You know, the staffing issues are huge. You know, we've got to do more, but we've got to find out how to fund this, and that's an important part. You know, there have been bills that were, you know, to be introduced to help fund the rural law that didn't get taken up, you know, this in Olympia, that needs to be revisited. I mean, we've got to lean on the legislators to get this done, to help come up with other funding to afford our additional law that we need here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're a bit over time here, but we wanted to give this race equal opportunity to answer questions. We are going to move to closing statements, and Darren, we're going to start with you.
All right. Well, I just want to say thank you to everybody for giving us this opportunity. I'm honored to earn the right to participate in this forum. It really is a worthwhile event, and it's nice for people to be able to see us that can't see us in person. I've spent my adult life, almost 40 years, to where I was farming and doing custom work, and I've worked around the county. I've seen the changes that have happened here, and I agree that Walla Walla is a great place to live. We come in ranked 21 out of 25 on the Forbes list. It's awesome. We've got to continue to make Walla Walla County the place to be, and with wisdom and leadership, we can get it done. Now, we've got to stay solvent. Financial, fiscal responsibilities is a huge deal. One of the things that I bring to the table is I've done it for years. I've had to be very creative at times when times are tough in the agriculture world, and even when my time, with the schools and the fire department. One of the most important things that to me is that I've had to hire and fire. I've had to sign both sides of the check. I've received a check and I've written checks and paid taxes, paid, federal government. I understand what it takes to do this job, and I would appreciate your vote on November 8th. And thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Danielle, Garbe, Reeser, to you.
I hope you heard in my answers tonight how much I care about this region and how much I want a better future for all of us. I believe I'm the candidate who is best qualified to contribute the most to our Board of County Commissioners. Our healthcare is on the ballot this year. Our democracy is on the ballot this year, but I am not on the ballot because I'm a write-in candidate. If I've earned your vote tonight, I'll need you to take the extra step on the ballot to fill in the oval office, or fill in the oval next to the blank line and write my name in on that line. So you will get a sample ballot in the mail that should look like this. You'll see that the county commissioner race is on the back. It is the third box down, and that's where you fill in the oval and write on the line. One of the big things that you can do to help is vote early. You can vote all the way up until November 8th, but it helps to get those in and show the momentum and excitement behind this campaign. Please also visit my website, garberesearch.com, to learn more.
Thank you very much. And finally, Gunnar Fulmer, to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the sponsors tonight, and thank you, Bertha, for taking the time and helping us out tonight. Appreciate it. Like I said earlier, I've been in public service for 28 years. I've been doing this for a long time. I believe I know what people expect from you in the public service area. I've been given a lot of tools and a lot of training over the 28 years. And I think a lot of those will fall into that county commissioner position really well. And I think they fit that really well. I understand what it's like for people to not agree with you. I've dealt with that a lot. You're not going to make everybody happy, and I understand that, and I'm okay with that. But what I would like to do is, try to sit down with the people and have discussions, even if we're not going to agree. Try to have that discussion anyway. Hopefully down the road it'll go somewhere. That's the type of guy that I am, and that's the kind of county commissioner position that I'd like to run. With the leadership training that I've had, I think it's so important that as a county commissioner, that's the top level. You should be leading the county by example. And part of that is just good communication with the public, making your office open to the public to get a hold of you. One of the questions that I keep getting is, if you get this position, will you retire from the police department? And I absolutely will. The county commissioner position will be my sole job. So I will pour all my attention into that position and do my best to serve the citizens of Walla Walla County and continue to make our county a fantastic place to want to live. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, again, I would like to thank all the candidates for sharing their time with us and making themselves available to answer your questions this evening. Thank you to you, our viewers. You can find this forum, the recording, on our Facebook page, and it will stay up clear through the election. So you can share that with someone who may have missed it. You can go back and rewatch if you want to get some clarification on anything. All of the candidates have expressed a willingness and an availability if you want to reach out and contact them directly for more information. Again, we would like to thank the Realtors Association and the AAUW for their help in organizing and sponsoring this event. I'd like to remind everybody out there, if you are not registered to vote, it is a very simple process to do. You can do it in person at the county courthouse. You can do that via mail. You can also do it online. And the website to do that is votewa.gov. So you can find information there. You can check to see if you are already registered, if you're unsure, but please make sure to vote and to be registered to vote. So with that, again, we would like to thank everyone involved. A special thank you to Bertha for moderating this evening and doing a wonderful job. We appreciate the folks who have volunteered their time to make this work and work well for all of the candidates. So thanks again. Don't forget to vote, clear up through November 8th, and we'll see you all next year.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you all. Bye.